Welcome back to The Bible as Art, where we explore the literary artistry of the Bible, and this week we're going to look at why Jesus was named Jesus. One of the common reasons given is that the Hebrew form means Yah, short for Yahweh, is salvation. And while that's certainly true, whenever you name someone a famous person's name, there's always more going on than simple etymology. For instance, if you had a Catholic family who named their daughter Teresa because the name means harvester, and they said they did this because she will harvest many souls for God, I would say, I think there's another reason too. And Jesus was named after a famous person, Joshua. But before we get into why Jesus was named after Joshua, we need to talk about a little translational issue. That is, Jesus means Joshua. It's the same word. Jesus is the Greek form of the Hebrew Joshua. It's like Juan and John, the same name in different languages. And this is important because most people who would be reading the Old Testament would be reading the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. For instance, most of the quotations of the Old Testament in the New Testament are from the Septuagint. This means that whenever the name Joshua shows up in the Old Testament, it literally says Jesus. So Jesus and Joshua are the same name. Okay, back to the meaning. There are two famous Joshuas in the Old Testament, and Jesus was named after both of them. The first one was the Joshua who was Moses' successor, the one who has a book named after him, the book of Joshua. So as the Christians are reading their Old Testament and the book of Joshua, they're just reading the book of Jesus, and Jesus is doing all of those things, like leading God's people into the land, and that's not by happenstance. The book and the life of Joshua, Jesus, is designed to foreshadow Jesus' life. In the broadest strokes, both of them begin their ministry with a baptism in the Jordan River, and both spend their ministry conquering Canaan. Before we get into some of the details about the foreshadowing, let's talk about the other famous Joshua. The other Joshua was a high priest in the post-exilic period, after the Israelites went back into the land of Israel after their exile in Babylon, things we learn about in Ezra and Nehemiah. And you can read about this Joshua in two places. First, Ezra. There, his name is sometimes translated as Jeshua. It's just a later vocalization of the same name. And second, most importantly for us, Zechariah 3 and 6. But before we get into Zechariah 3, here's a question. Why was the post-exilic Joshua named after the Exodus Joshua? Why do these two men have the same name? Well, there's one big similarity between the two. Both are leading the people in the conquest of the land. The first Joshua led the people originally into the land, and the second Joshua led the people in the land when they returned back to the land in the post-exilic period. So we could say a Joshua, a Jesus, always leads his people into the land at the beginning of the conquest. Okay, so let's look at Zechariah 3 and 6 so that we can see who this second Joshua is. Zechariah 3 is the fourth of 7 or 8 night visions. There's some debate about how many visions there are. And these night visions show Zechariah images or visions at night. The episode is only 10 verses, so let's read it. Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. And the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, O Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is not this a brand plucked from the fire?" Now Joshua was standing before the angel, clothed with filthy garments. And the angel said to those who were standing before him, "Remove the filthy garments from him." And to him he said, "Look, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you with pure vestments." And I said, "Let them put a clean turban on his head." So they put a clean turban on his head, and clothed him with garments. And the angel of the Lord was standing by. And the angel of the Lord solemnly assured Joshua, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways and keep my charge, then you shall rule my house and have charge of my courts, and I will give you the right of access among those who are standing here. Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, you and your friends who sit before you, for they are men who are a sign. Look, I will bring my servant the branch. For look, on the stone that I have set before Joshua, on a single stone with 7 eyes, I will engrave its inscription, declares the Lord of hosts. And I will remove the iniquity of this land in a single day. In that day, declares the Lord, every one of you will invite his neighbor to come under his vine and fig tree. So the scene is in heaven with 4 characters: Joshua, an angel, God, and Satan. Satan accuses Joshua of sin, or Israel of sin, because Joshua as the high priest represents the people. And God rebukes Satan because God doesn't count the sin because he removes it. And he symbolizes the removal of sin by removing Joshua's dirty clothes and giving him clean clothes. That is, the action that occurs only once a year on the Day of Atonement. Interestingly, the first Joshua had an encounter with an angel that involved the removal of clothes. That was in Joshua chapter 4. So also God put stones in front of both Joshuas to remind them of God's great act of salvation, the crossing of the Jordan River in Joshua 4, and here the stone that is engraved. And that stone will be a remembrance of the removal of sin in a single day. In Zechariah 6, a crown is placed on Joshua's head, and he will be a priest king who will rebuild the temple. So both Joshuas are concerned with God's place, the land with the first Joshua and the temple with the second. Both are concerned with God's salvation, and both lead the people at the beginning of the giving of or the conquest of the land. So why is Jesus named after these 2 Joshuas? Because he does the same things. When Jesus comes, he is bringing the people back from exile, beginning the conquest of the land. There's been so much written on this, but let's just think about a few details. When Jesus begins his public ministry, he goes out to the Jordan River for baptism. That is, his ministry starts where the Israelites' ministry started, implying that the land needs reconquering. And reconquering he does, because right after his baptism, he battles Satan, driven out into the desert, just like Joshua and Zechariah. And Jesus' ministry is a battle throughout the land, a battle against the ravages of sin and sickness, Satan and his army. And at the end of his life, just like Joshua and Zechariah, he will have his clothes removed and have a crown and clothes put back on. In Matthew 28, it says, "And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him and twisted together a crown of thorns. And after he was killed, there was a stone that was rolled in front of the tomb, just like the stones in the first 2 Joshuas." Both of these acts, the replacing of clothes and the covering of the tomb with a stone, were intended by Jesus' enemies to act against him, not knowing that these were antique prophetic images of salvation. And Jesus will also build the temple. In John 2, Jesus refers to the tearing down and rebuilding of the temple of his body. And in another video, I talked about the symbolism of gold, frankincense, and myrrh being temple images as they were brought to the temple, just like they were brought to Jesus, the new temple, at his birth. And like Joshua and Zechariah, Jesus will bring about the removal of sin in a single day as the priest king of Israel. And that, my friends, is why the Bible is art. Thank you everyone for checking out the video this week. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to support the channel, as always, you can go to patreon.com/thebibleisart. You can check out my website, thebibleisart.com. I put things there. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.